Spider-Man was created by Marvel, but the company sold the movie rights to the character in the late 90s to avoid bankruptcy. Since then, Spider-Man has been owned by Sony, which has the final say on what happens with the web-slinger in the movies. Sony handled Sam Raimi's trilogy, Andrew Garfield's saga, the Spider-Verse universe, and the awful Spider-Man universe where Spider-Man doesn't show up. Peter Parker can team up with the Avengers thanks to an agreement between Marvel Studios and Sony, but every year they run into issues because they can't agree on how to handle the character. But what if Marvel got back the rights to Spider-Man, like they did with the Fantastic Four and the X-Men? That's what we're talking about today. For something like that to happen, Sony would need to break their agreement with Marvel. Right now, they're required to make at least one Spider-Man movie every 5 years, or else they lose the rights. The spin-offs in the Sonyverse count, which means Marvel could get the rights back around 2029. But Beyond the Spider-Verse also counts, and that movie doesn't even have a release date yet. At this rate, the character might not return to Marvel until after 2030.
I don't want to wait.
But there's a better option. It's much more likely that Kraven bombs at the box office, and Sony realizes they don't know what they're doing with Spider-Man. After the poor reception of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, they turned to Marvel for help, so it wouldn't be surprising if the same thing happens after their shared universe fails. Sony might agree to sell Spider-Man for a price I can't even imagine, maybe $5 billion or something. That's a ton of money, almost double what Endgame made. But Disney has that kind of cash to spend, and it would be worth it for them to make the purchase. Negotiations would take a while, just like the Disney-Fox merger. But to keep this video from turning into a business lecture, let's imagine Marvel gets Spider-Man back by the end of this December. From then on, they can do whatever they want with the character.
That's business.
The first thing Marvel should do is include a Spider-Man cameo in Daredevil Born Again. I know the series already finished filming and is in post-production, but it wouldn't be the first time they've added cameos through reshoots. They should sneak in a cameo from Tom Holland in the final episode to connect Born Again with Spider-Man 4. This would be impossible with Sony in the mix, because they want Spider-Man 4 to be another multiversal crossover with Andrew and Tobey. But Marvel would give us what we all want. They'd turn the movie into a street-level story with Kingpin as the villain and Daredevil as a supporting character. They can do this because Spider-Man 4 hasn't started filming yet. The movie could adapt Devil's Reign, the comic where Kingpin becomes mayor, which would also tie into Born Again Season 2.
I'm a little turned on.
I know Spider-Man 4 will be released after Doomsday, and it's likely Doctor Doom will reshape the multiverse at the end of that movie, but Spider-Man 4 could take place before Doomsday. If that sounds confusing, think about this. Captain Marvel and Ant-Man and the Wasp came out after Infinity War, but their stories worked as prequels to that movie, and no one left the theater confused. The same thing could happen here. The connection to Doomsday could come in the final scene of Spider-Man 4 or a post-credits scene, and that's it. We could see Holland's Peter Parker swinging through New York after defeating Kingpin, and boom! The whole city would change because of Doctor Doom, and Peter would end up on Battleworld. Or, if they really want to blow our socks off, Andrew and Tobey could show up again in Universe 616 to ask Holland for help because they're recruiting a multiversal Avengers team to fight Doom.
I'll be damned if I didn't get really turned on.
Spider-Man 4 and Doomsday would be connected, without messing up the street-level story we all want to see. But that's not all. As I mentioned earlier, Sony also manages the animated Spider-Man universe starring Miles Morales. The production of Beyond the Spider-Verse would continue as planned and hit theaters sometime soon, I hope. We're not giving it a release date because we have no idea how far along it is. As long as it's as good as Across the Spider-Verse, everyone will be happy. Sony is also working on a Spider-Man noir series for Prime Video. Marvel shouldn't change anything about that show, since it's almost done. But what they should do is convince Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the masterminds behind Noir and Spider-Verse, to keep working on the Spider-Man universe. Reports suggest they were supposed to lead Sony's live-action Spider-Man projects, just like Feige does for the MCU, but they left due to creative differences with Sony. Their last projects tied to Spider-Man will be Beyond and Spider-Man Noir, but Marvel can't just let them go. Lord and Miller had issues with Sony's executives, but if Marvel gets Spider-Man back, these two could work directly with Kevin Feige, who knows how to collaborate with creative minds. Ever since James Gunn left, Feige has been missing a top-tier creative partner. Lord and Miller know a lot about superheroes. They know how to tell great stories. Audiences love them, and their recent projects have been box office hits.
I love them.
Lord and Miller could oversee everything Spider-Man related, and if Feige ever decides to leave Marvel to explore new opportunities, they could take over the MCU for several years. I trust them completely, because they've made two of the best superhero movies of all time. But for all this to work, Marvel needs to do a few more things. They need to cancel the universe with Kraven, Morbius, and Madame Web. No one wants to see these characters without Spider-Man, and this universe has a terrible reputation. Fans don't like it, critics don't like it, and it doesn't do well at the box office. Luckily, it seems like this is already happening, because The Wrap reported that Sony has no more plans for Spider-Man villain movies. Anyway, the best move is to pretend all these movies never happened. Marvel would also cancel El Muerto and the Silver Sable and Black Cat projects to focus on Spider-Man stories. The MCU should build an entire saga around Spider-Man. We know Feige wants to focus on the X-Men and and Fantastic Four after Secret Wars, probably in a mutant saga, with villains like Galactus, Apocalypse, or Mr. Sinister. After that, Marvel could fully capitalize on Spider-Man, making him the main hero of the MCU once and for all. They could use the symbiote, Venom, Carnage, and Null.
I don't get it.
At the end of No Way Home, a piece of Venom stayed in Universe 616. It's clear Marvel wants Holland's Spider-Man to wear the black suit during Secret Wars, just like in the comics. If they regain the rights to the character, they can tell the symbiote's story properly. Tom Holland could wear the black suit for several movies, showing how the symbiote gradually affects his personality after Secret Wars. Once Peter realizes what's happening, he'd remove the suit during the Mutant Saga, possibly in Spider-Man 5. The Mutant Saga would focus on the X-Men, but Spider-Man would still show up regularly. This would be the perfect way to develop the symbiote story. Marvel wouldn't need to change Spider-Man's costume constantly, which they do now to sell more toys. If they profit from ticket sales instead, there'd be no need to ditch the black suit 2 hours after it bonds with Peter.
That does make sense.
After leaving Peter, the symbiote would then bond with MCU's Eddie Brock, who hasn't been introduced yet. They'd also give us a new version of Carnage and introduce more symbiotes that bond with various Marvel characters. This would lead into King in Black. The Spider-Man saga would include an adaptation of Absolute Carnage, where Carnage becomes Null's servant and leads an army to reclaim the codexes inside everyone who's ever bonded with a symbiote. That's why it's crucial for symbiotes to exist in the MCU for a few years before Null arrives, so the story can be adapted properly. Sony would never do this, because they don't have the rights to other Marvel characters, and they don't care about making good comic book adaptations either. Absolute Carnage would be a brutal crossover featuring Spider-Man, the new Venom, and the Avengers. In the end, the heroes would defeat Carnage, but accidentally free Null from his prison. I know this might sound confusing, since in The Last Dance, we were told that Null needed Venom's codex to escape, but I doubt Marvel would reuse the xenophage subplot, with the aliens coming to Earth to kidnap a symbiote host. It'd be better to forget all that, since no one will remember it by the time this story gets adapted.
I don't remember.
King in Black would be the Avengers-level event that closes the Spider-Man saga. Null would arrive on Earth to kill everyone, and all the heroes would join forces to stop him. This time, we'd see the X-Men and Fantastic Four, who weren't in Absolute Carnage, in one of the MCU's biggest events ever. Sentry is set to appear in Thunderbolts, so Marvel could adapt this iconic comic moment and give Venom a big role, since he's the one who defeated Null in the comics. Silver Surfer should be a major MCU character by then, and he shows up at the end of King in Black. This movie would easily make $2 billion. After that, Marvel can do whatever they want with Spider-Man. They could introduce Hobgoblin, the Sinister Six, Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Woman, team him up with the Avengers, or even make a Deadpool and Spider-Man movie. Sean Levy, the director of Deadpool and Wolverine, said he'd love to direct a crossover between the two. Can you imagine seeing that in live action? If fans were already hyped about their comics and everyone loved their team up in Ultimate Spider-Man, this crossover would blow up theaters. But wait, we've talked a lot about Peter Parker, but what about Miles Morales? We don't know how Beyond the Spider-Verse will end, but Kevin Feige said he wants Miles in live action after Secret Wars. The best move would be to wait until the end of the Mutant Saga to introduce Miles in the MCU. First as a supporting character for Peter, and then as a fully fledged Spider-Man who can lead his own projects, or even take over as the main Spider-Man once Holland steps away. I know how that sounds, but it wouldn't be too soon for that. Keep in mind that each Marvel saga lasts 8 to 10 years. Holland would already be in his 30s by the end of the Mutant Saga and the start of the Spider-Man saga. Marvel could give him and Miles a dynamic like the one in the video game, since Holland wouldn't be a kid anymore. They could even have him die in King in Black so Miles can take over, at least until Peter gets recast after a second reboot. All of this sounds amazing, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Sony has no plans to stop profiting off Spider-Man, which is their most valuable IP. But instead of telling good Spider-Man stories, they seem more focused on dragging the character down, and possibly Marvel with them. If they get their way, Spider-Man 4 could be a total disaster. We break down their plans for Spidey in this video over here.
I'll watch it.